Am I live? Is it happening? So I'm not sure if I'm on or not, if you guys can hear me, because I have my headset on. So if you can hear me and you can see me, we're going to start this in a few minutes. It would be cool if someone hits like or says we can hear you or we can't hear you, Griff. And at that point, I'll get started. Meanwhile, I'll just make sure that I don't have any food in my beard or anything like that. Got my hat on. So is anybody there that can confirm that this is happening? So far, it's a mystery. Oh, what's going on here? Okay. Are we there? Can you see me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me and see me? Can you hear me and see me? This looks weird on here or something. Amber, can you hear me? All right, let's do it then. I am Griff, and I am at the Humboldt Redwood State Park Visitor Center, which is empty. And usually the only time it closes is on Christmas, and I think Thanksgiving. It only closed 2 days a year, except for now, because of what we're going through. So just want you guys to know that if you come to the park, you need to maintain 6 feet social distance from other hikers, and that you wash your hands a lot like I did before I started touching all the shared equipment. And then after I'm done, I'm gonna wipe off all the shared equipment and wash my hands again, because I'm not the only one who uses this. But if you guys are ready, I am super excited to show you what's going on out here, because there are flowers. There's also someone really loud over there, so maybe we won't hang out here too long. But there are flowers in Humboldt Redwood State Park right now. So let's check some of them out. First of all, I'm gonna see, ooh, you guys are going all over the place. Let me see. I got this gimbal here that said that it didn't want to cooperate. Okay. And let me switch you guys this way. I'm gonna show you a really cool flower that's shaped like something that you all will recognize. So when you see it, tell me what you think it's called, because it's called something. A lot of times plants are called stuff that they look like. So what does that flower look like to you? Do you see it? I wish this could focus better. There's one, and here's some more. Aren't those beautiful? Those are called, does anybody know? Lorena, Carmen. Those are called Love Lies Bleeding. So this is not cooperating nearly as good as it did yesterday. Love Lies Bleeding, or Bleeding Hearts, excuse me. They're called Bleeding Hearts. So let's see what else is blooming over here. It's kind of like flying, huh? Except for the gimbal's not cooperating today. The gimbal says no thank you, Griff. So I'm going to untwist the gimbal. Hold on, folks. For those of you just joining, oh, you guys are going to get seasick from that, huh? Those of you just joining, this is Griff. I'm an interpreter in Humboldt Redwood State Park, and we are about to go on a walk as soon as I can get my equipment to cooperate, which is always an issue, especially in these COVID days where all these Zoom meetings and stuff. So here is a really, really cool flower and plant. This is Ribes sanguineum, aka red flowering currant. And they have these, they're one of the first bloomers, and which is good because hummingbirds love them. Where you see Ribes sanguineum, you're probably going to see a hummingbird really, really soon, which is cool because hummingbirds have a different migration than most birds. They come up earlier, and they're very early nesters. Owls and hummingbirds are nesting like sometimes in January and February. There's even been records of hummingbirds nesting in December up here, which is unheard of for any other species, as far as I know. If you know better, please let me know. But the Ribes sanguineum is a favorite food plant to hummingbirds. And then and so the hummingbirds are one of its pollinators. And then it makes berries, and the berries are I've read, edible to humans, and I've also read they don't taste very good. So once again, Ribes sanguineum, and you can, if you live within Ribes sanguineum's range, if it's a native plant to your area, native meaning that it evolved in your area, they're easy to grow from cuttings. You can get cuttings in the fall and plant them around your house. If you want 5 of them, plant 10, because a lot of them don't make it, but plant them in the fall, water them a lot that first summer, maybe even the second summer, and then they should be good, and you can have hummingbirds. The hummingbirds would be really, really grateful if you planted those. So we're gonna walk into the forest a little bit deeper, because I guess they saw me start the camera and everybody decided to reverse at the same time, so those loud beeps can go off. Oh, and here is, y'all know what this is, right? Because we talked about it last week. Here is Trillium, and Trillium's one of the many lilies that we have in the park that are blooming right now. Like, this is the time to be in the park. I'm not saying that to make anybody jealous, because I know a lot of you are sheltering in place, but there are so many flowers blooming right now. But I'm gonna show you, never fear, I'm gonna show you some of them. All right, there you go, Gimbal. This Gimbal's rebelling against me. So we're gonna walk across what is usually a super busy parking lot, and we're gonna go into the Gould Grove, and it's named after Saltonstall Gould, which was one of the many people who were memorialized by getting groves purchased for them from Save the Redwood League, and they turned those groves over to us, and it became a park, which is so awesome. So it's people using their wealth for the good. Someone look both ways and cross the street. So there are some beautiful flowers out here that are not native, and they're growing in all this poison oak, so I'm gonna be careful. But it's, you know, it's called vinca or periwinkle, and it's non-native and invasive. And I'm gonna do a longer live video on invasive plants, and I'm gonna do a lot of stuff on invasive plants, because it's the one thing that we could really do to help wildlife and native plants, is to get rid of invasives, even when they're pretty. They're pretty, but they still gotta go. So I know it's getting dark in here. Hopefully it will. There we go. So I got some cool plants to show you, because it's spring, and we have some unusual flowers here, because if you're gonna bloom underneath this canopy, okay, so this is a really thick canopy, this is a very dark place, you got to be a great photosynthesizer. And photosynthesis, as a review, is that magic that all of us depend on, that plants can perform. They can turn sunlight into sugar, and that sugar is the food for basis of all life. Even if you ate meat all the time, you're like, oh, I don't need plants, I eat meat all the time. Well, the cows eat so much plants and grass, and it gets all that sugar the plants created into its body, that sunlight. So it's basically sunlight, this energy that goes through our food system. It's crazy, it's magical, I love it. And like I said the other day, just because there's some magical phenomena like photosynthesis, just because you can explain it scientifically, doesn't mean that it's no longer magical. It just means that you're a wizard, okay? So here's some more of our super cool friends. Can you see it? The Trilliums, which, like I said, is one of the lilies. So there's lots of things that make a park a park. You know, political designations and all that kind of stuff. But also, what makes a park is the way it looks. Finca, ew, you're right, Rachel. So, when you guys think of parks, what do you think about? Like when you guys think of state parks and national parks, I don't know if there's a lag between when you guys are seeing this, but what makes a beautiful park to you? And I'll show you this beautiful park while we're at it. So, this is where I'm at. This is the Gould Grove Nature Loop Trail. And so many nature writers have talked about this place. And they always describe this redwood sorrel you see on the ground, on the screen you see on the ground. They always say it's carpeting the redwood forest floor. And it really is. So over here, you have someone brought out some plastic flowers and some real flowers. and they discarded them right there. It probably wasn't because they were terrible, bad people, but let me just tell you something about that. So the COVID virus is an invasive species. It's a non-native disease. It's not native to North America as far as we know. And it was introduced because it got on a plane and it got here really fast, allegedly. Okay. So it's not just human viruses. Oh wait, Redwood said cultural, historical, and natural significance. That's what makes a park. There you go. Precious said diversity, and she is right. Biological diversity and more human diversity, because we all need to get into our park. So the virus jumped in on the plane and came here, and that's been happening with plants for a long time. Like sudden oak death was a fungus that jumped on a plane, rode here in a pot, got to a nursery. That pot got sold, got planted in the ground. That's how that disease spread. So plant diseases have been spreading from airplanes and boats for a very long time, and we know how that transmission works. And COVID virus is doing that to humans. And a lot of diseases have done that historically. A lot of like smallpox and flus and colds came over here from Europe and Eurasia, and where they weren't native here, and killed a lot of the native species and a lot of the indigenous people. So this isn't cool. Don't bring plants into the park, okay? Like this plant right here, like that's not cool. I'm sure whatever you thought it was cool, but it's not cool because this might have diseases on it, and I'll throw this away. Also, I never understood the tradition of giving someone flowers, because a flower is a plant's reproductive organism. So you're giving a bouquet, a grouping of severed reproductive organisms to someone you like. Sounds like a bad foreshadowing. If you want to give someone flowers, why don't you give... Ooh, even the camera had to move away from that. If you really like someone, you want to give them flowers, give them native flowers, like flowers that are native to a pot of a plant that's going to bloom. Or some native flower seeds, or a painting, or a drawing. But don't cut them off, especially native plants around here. And plus, it's illegal. But like, there's a lot of beautiful flowers here, and people want to enjoy them. So let me, like these awesome trilliums, which aren't going to be blooming very much longer. And last week I told you guys how their seed dispersal mechanism. Does anybody remember what that means? Their seed dispersal mechanism is ants. So, and they're not the only ones. So sorrel, redwood sorrel right here, it's pretty cool. They are excellent photosynthesizers, and they taste like green apples. Yep, Jermaine, I love trilliums too. And these are really cool plants. They taste like green apples. They got oxalic acid in them, which I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I know they give me bubble guts if I eat too much, so don't eat too much. Just a few, and I've heard that they're high in vitamin C. I've never looked that up, but it tastes like vitamin C, if that makes sense. Yep, Rachel Montgomery says, and tasty. Yes, Sandra, I'd rather have the whole plant too than some severed reproductive organisms. I mean, reproductive parts from some organism. Poor organism. And you know, flowers take so much energy, like trilliums back there. It takes years for them to put the, to turn enough sunlight into sugar and store it in their bulbs and their rhizomes. Rhizomes and corms, I think they have. And so when you pull off that flower, it's such a waste. Plus there was insects depending on that nectar, and there was ants depending on the seeds. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So do you guys, I don't want to jump around too much. Do you guys have any questions? Ask me any questions. Can you say the name again, please? Ooh, of trillium? Name of what? Temper high vitamin C. Oh, okay. Cool, Megan. Megan would know. Ranger Griff is one of my... Oh, thank you, Antran. I appreciate that. I feel blessed to be here, let me tell you. This is just every time I never get sick of being in the Redwoods. I've lived in the Redwoods. I've lived in Prairie Creek, Redwood State Park for a couple of years, and I never stopped going outside and being awe-inspired. So we are on a flower hunt right now. So let me show you how this, what kind of wildlife is there, Bronco? Well, you know, I want to tell you about one in particular. There's a lot of different kinds of wildlife here, but we have this flying squirrel here, and they've always thought there was only two flying squirrels in North America, the northern flying squirrel and the southern flying squirrel. And then a handful of years, maybe just a couple years ago, I can't remember how long ago, but not very long ago, they looked at the ones that lived here and they thought, man, those squirrels, flying squirrels, look way smaller than the northern flying squirrel. And so they did some genetic tests and found out we have our own flying squirrel here, and it's called the Humboldt flying squirrel. So we kind of like discovered a new species, sort of, kind of. So that's one of the cool things we hear. Flying squirrels are totally nocturnal, so unfortunately we don't see them very much. Redwood sorrel. Okay, so we're going to, yes, Lorena, redwood sorrel looks just like clover, except for the flower is different. So here we go. So violets, man, never underestimate the importance of violets. I have really started to understand how important they are. And we have a couple different yellow violets here. We have western yellow violets. We have redwood violets, also called evergreen violets. And the reason why they're so important is because of a fact that I wish everybody understood. Okay, Megan says, there were also, yes, Viola sempervirens growing with those redwood sorrel, and those are very high in vitamin C. Plus the flowers are super tasty. Ooh, I've never had a violet flower. Or are you talking about the sorrel flowers? So the reason why violets are so incredibly important is because of this relationship that pretty much all plants have with animals, especially insects. So if you're stuck in the ground, say like you were stuck in the ground, how would you escape a tiger or a saber-toothed tiger or a bear, grizzly bear? Like, how would you escape if you were stuck in the ground? You know what I mean? You'd have to be poisonous. You'd have to have thorns. You'd have to taste like crap. You know, plants have to have some pretty, like most of their defense mechanisms against the things that want to eat them, herbivores, are chemicals. And when you have this defense for millions of years and there's these insects evolving with you, or hundreds of thousands of years, eventually they evolve to deal with your poison. And when an insect like a butterfly or a moth evolves to deal with a plant's poison, that plant becomes its host plant. And I talk about this a lot, and I'm going to keep repeating this because I want everybody to understand this is like one of the most important ecological aspects or concepts. So violets, several butterflies totally depend on violets because they've evolved to deal with violets' poison, and now they only lay their eggs on violets. And oh, I forgot to so the violet butterflies are this one. So this only lays its eggs on violet. Isn't that pretty? Now, if you had a bunch of violets growing, if you had a bunch of native violets growing in your yard, and there was bite marks on it, and people were like, oh, you got bite marks on your violets. You should probably spray something on that. This is what you'd be spraying, or this, okay? No one is mad at beautiful butterflies in your yard. No one's ever gonna come over to your house and be like, dude, I'd come over to your house again, but you got way too many butterflies. No one's ever said that. And if you look around here, okay, if you look around here, there's bite marks on these plants if you look really carefully, but no one comes to the redwoods and then goes up to the visitor center and says to the visitor center, I really enjoyed your park. I'd come back were it not for all the bite marks I saw on the plants. No one's ever said that before. So plant native plants and deal with these bite marks, because a lot of times, like especially in the case of violets, this is who's laying their eggs on the violets. So the caterpillars that are on there turn into this. And then this, as an adult, goes out and pollinates other plants. That's special and unique and wonderful relationship. So if you look at the native plant finder, and I'll try to remember to put it in the post, National Wildlife Federation has a native plant finder, and you could put in your zip code and find out the plants that are native to your area. And then you could find out, you could go, like in California, we have Calscape. So you could go to Calscape and you could put in the name of the violet that grows in your area, and it will tell you what butterflies lay their eggs on it. So then you could be looking for stuff like this, which is totally awesome. So I forgot to show you guys something when we were by the ribes. This is what lays its eggs on the ribes. This is a silk moth. I call it the Nike moth because it looks like it's got that Nike moth symbol. They're huge and they're super, super cool. They lay their eggs on a handful of California native plants, but I love seeing them. I wish I saw them more often. They're definitely around here. And this is another plant that, this is another butterfly that lays its eggs on that red flowering currant we looked at. So if you had bite marks in your red flowering currant, it's probably because it's the caterpillar of this thing. No one's mad at caterpillar. No one's mad at butterflies. So let's keep walking. So that was the violet. And just remember that insects evolved with native plants. And some evolved to lay their eggs on them. Others evolved to pollinate them. And so see those little black marks inside this violet flower? Does anybody know what those are? Those are nectar guides. So you know, like when you're landing a plane at night and you see those like lights on the runway saying this way, land here, land here. That's what those are. Or if you go into like McDonald's or some fast food restaurant and they have like special colored tile that leads you right to the counter. That's what that is. That's like saying, come here, bee, a little bit closer. We have nectar. And then the sexual organs of this plant drop pollen onto the bee or whatever pollinator, and usually the pollinator has no idea. Pollinators go in there because it's greedy and it wants some nectar. So, anyways, let's keep walking. Hope I didn't put my knee down in poison oak, because the poison oak is having a great year. Let me tell you, they are having a great year. All right. Oh, this is beautiful. You guys got to see this. Look at this. Oh, I love it. You should have seen it last night. Oh my gosh. When the sun slants in here in the evening, man, I was walking through here. I was talking to my mom and I was trying to describe it to her, and words and pictures just can't do it. So once we're no longer sheltering in place, you guys have got to explore your parks, wherever you're at. But if you're in this area, or if you're planning to come to this area, man, you are just going to be blown away. It's always beautiful here. But in the evening and in the morning, it's like extra, especially since all the birds are singing. Right now, it's really, really quiet. But it smells fresh. It smells really good. All your senses are just heightened when you're here, because you have things way over your head. You have like new smells. You're hearing things in the distance, bird calls or water. The river is right there. So this is just a magical place. So here's another lily, and you can kind of tell that it's a lily because it has those like parallel veins, those long veins, and that's kind of like a good indication that it's a lily. Not always, there's other plants that have that too, but here it's a good indication. And this is one of the fairy bells. This is a large flowered fairy bell, and it's one of many lilies in the redwoods. And I don't know who pollinates it, and I'm gonna find out. So if you know, I would love to hear about it. So they've just been popping. It's amazing how fast they grow. They're ephemerally perennial, which means that they die back and they live under the ground for the winter. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and type them in, or if you want to look at something again or closer, I would be happy to show you what you want to see. So, oops, what was that? Okay. Hopefully you guys are still there. We haven't had any comments for a minute. Okay, so I'm looking for, oh, look at, here's a flower. So this flower, I need to sit down with a Jepson's Manual, which is a book that helps you figure out plants. No idea fairy bell was lily family. Cool. Yeah, there's a lot of, oh, there's my cousin Ginny. I love the trails. It's a safe, peaceful feeling. Yes, it is. So this is either, it's a type of mustard. It's in the mustard family. And it's either, what's your favorite place in Humboldt? Redwoods? Okay, I want to answer that question. And it's either Nettles, Toothwort, or Milkmaid. And so I need to figure it out. I meant to figure it out, but it also is a larval host plant for stuff. And so here's one of the butterflies that is a larval host plant on these little native mustards, and it's called Orange Tip, Sarah Orange Tip. And it's beautiful. So look at even this little tiny flower. Most people be like, oh, I don't need to plant that. It's small, whatever. No, it's a larval host plant. You know, like you could be a hardcore conservationist in your yard, on your porch, in your balcony, just by planting the plants that are native to your area. You could have your own park. Because when I asked you guys what makes a park, for me, what makes a park is the ecology of place. So the plants that are native there, the wildlife that are interacting with those plants and have been for, you know, whatever, millions of years. And you can do that in your yard, on your balcony, you know, on your porch. You don't have to have property. You could plant, shoot, if you're in monarch area, and in California, monarchs are just disappearing. It's tragically sad. And if you planted a bunch of native flowers for them to nectar on and a bunch of milkweeds, that would be so helpful. And so you're doing your part. Like, you know, you don't have to be president of the World Wildlife Conservation Fund to make a difference. So look at this nurse log. Isn't this crazy? This log has been here so long. There's soil on the top, thanks to our decomposers. I see some little flies. See, a lot of things get pollinated by little flies. Look at this little fly. Can you see it? Where'd he go? There he is. Can you see him? This little fly. Oh, he flew away. See, look at, here's some bite marks on this bay laurel. Uh-oh, we're gonna have to go complain at the visitor center. They didn't spray the forest down enough, and now we saw some bite marks. You know, why are we so concerned about bite marks on plants? It's a great sign. It means your garden's got soul. It means your park's got soul. It means butterflies are coming. Sterile yards full of pesticides just aren't helpful or beautiful. All right. No offense to those of you who have big old lawns, but it's not too late to change. So we are, oh, look at, there's more. Bobbies can't see them. So we're coming up on one of my very favorite plants that I've been saving to this point. Megan says, local native plant society, most seasonal plant sales. Yes, there's local native plant. Every state has, thank you, Megan. Every state has a native plant society. I believe that I've confirmed that. And you have native plant nurseries. Go there first, okay? And if you buy from a box retailer, a lot of times they treat their seeds with neonicotinoids, which stay in your plant for a couple of years and just kill all the pollinators that come to it because it's poison. They drink the poison nectar. It's like rat poison in rats, and then the hawk eats it. You know, it bioaccumulates. So you want to get organic from your native plant society or from a native plant nursery that does not use poisons. Rachel says, I saw sword ferns and I love them. And we're going to have a whole day, or not a whole day, but a whole live broadcast just for ferns because this place is fernalicious. So this plant right here, I wish you could smell it because it's wild ginger. And there's a few different types of wild gingers. This one lives all through the Pacific Northwest, but we do have an endemic wild ginger in California. Endemic is a cool word to learn. Endemic means only lives in a certain place. So if it's endemic to California, it only lives in California. If it's endemic to Solano County, it is only in Solano County. If it's endemic to Humboldt Redwood State Parks, it means it only lives here. This one is endemic to the Pacific Northwest. That's its flower. Look at that. Look at that. Isn't that crazy? What in the world? Look at this. Look at these flowers. Isn't that crazy? Look at those petals. It's like a spider and a flower had a baby. It's so crazy. And they're on the underside of the plant, low to the ground. And I've always wondered why. I was like, how do the pollinators see it? But you know what? I'm not the only one that's wandering around, excuse me. I'm trying to do two things at once here. Wondering about that. Whoa. So no one's really sure exactly how wild ginger is pollinated. There's a bunch of really good hypotheses, and I've read some pretty cool stuff that sounds convincing. So one of the things is they're low to the ground and they're this like flesh color, and so they think that the wild ginger flower is trying to oh, there's a bumblebee. Maybe the bumblebee will come here and show us how pollination's done. So they think that these like carrion flies that eat dead stuff, they come out in the spring to like feed on everything that died over the winter, and they crawl into the wild ginger's flower and pollinate it. I read something else that says they crawl into there and then they die because the flower is poisonous. So there's still a lot of things we don't know about nature. People always think that we've discovered everything and that we know. We don't. We don't even know where some birds, like how some birds nest, like who takes care of the baby. There's a lot of unanswered questions. So never get discouraged. We need you to go to college and study this stuff. Or just be interested and use it and help us discover, using citizen science like iNaturalist app. And I'll do a live thing on iNaturalist app. Let's do one more look at this ginger flower since it's so incredible and unusual and very, very unique. Look at that. Isn't that crazy? This plant smells so good, and it's got some antiseptic properties, and it tastes good. People have been eating them for thousands of years. It does look like an orchid, Kevin. It's a really, really cool plant. And if it's native to your area, you should plant it. And it's got some deer resistance, and it's got some slug resistance, which are super important out here because we have the second biggest terrestrial slug in the world, banana slugs. And we got lots of deer. And this is not their preferred food because it's got such a strong taste. But that strong taste that throws them off makes us like them. So, hey Susan, you guys are welcome to ask me any questions you may have. I'm going to walk back down this trail and I would be happy to answer your questions. Look at this, it's burning out right here. It got damaged and then it burnt right there. And now there's this fungus, because usually funguses can't get into redwood trees, but now there's this fungus and it's called Sorea sequoia. It was named after this. And it will get right behind this burn area and it will eat the wood. Because usually, because the tannins in redwoods are pretty resistant against funguses, but the Sorea sequoia will get in there and then a fire will come and it will make this bigger, and then this Sorea sequoia will get back in there. So it goes fungus, fire, and eventually makes a chimney tree or goose pin tree, whatever you want to call it. And then bats and bears and everything else live in there. There's some questions further up. Okay, let me see here. That is where I get my milkweed and other native plants. Good, Lorena. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Where is the best place for people to get native plants? Native plant societies often have plant sales, and then native plant nurseries. And you can probably call your native plant society and ask them where the nurseries are. I think I think so too, Jermaine. Any other question? What kinds of ferns are here? Okay, we can talk about ferns. All right, so there is a lot of ferns and a lot of poison oak here. So let's flip over. Let me see if there's any questions real quick. So sword ferns are pretty, I'm trying to flip the camera here. There we go. Sword ferns are boss for 8 million reasons, but and the way you can tell they're sword ferns is because they were named for, see one of these individual leaves, see that little thumb, let me see if it's bright enough here, I don't know if you can see it. See the individual little thumb on the base of that leaf? That's like a hilt on a sword. So one of these like leaflets is considered a sword, and that's why it's called sword fern. Do we have air plants here? No, I don't think so, no. Can you explain what a goosepin tree is? A goosepin tree is a hollowed out tree where it's been burnt out and is now hollow. And the reason why they call it goosepin is because during the Depression era, people used to keep geese and other stuff in there. They'd gate them up and they'd keep livestock. But this sword fern, also sword ferns often have spores because they're not flowering plants. And this cruel thing I used to do when I used to run youth crews is, and it wasn't, I would never do it now, but I was younger, and I'd say, whoever could find a fern flower, I will give you $100 because I really want a fern flower. And they would go and they would look and look and look, and no one ever found one. I know that was terrible of me. I would not do that now. Ferns don't flower. They're older than flowering plants. They're older than redwoods. They're older than dinosaurs. sword ferns are old school. I can't remember how many million years, but I think it's 200 million years that the first sword fern fossil was found. And they can drink through their leaves. It's called foliar uptake, and I talk about that a lot too because it amazes me. Redwoods can do it too, but sword ferns are the best at it. So sword ferns is one of our premier, most common ferns, and you will definitely see them when you come here. And if they're native to your area and you've got a wet, shady part of your house, they're pretty cool plants to have around. We'll look at a couple more ferns. I mean, you keep those youth crews busy. Yes, I do. Sometimes at night they would be doing too much around the camp, and I would need to send them on a ecological treasure hunt. Sometimes I would make them think really hard and have them understand that not all plants make flowers. Angiosperms are the flowering plants. Okay, so here's another fern. So this is another one of those ephemeral perennial plants. So it sleeps, it hibernates under the ground in the winter, and then it comes up. And there's a bunch of ferns like this. And lady ferns are really common in the redwoods. And they're lighter green. I usually could tell the difference between, deciduous, not all the time, and perennial by how it feels. Perennial plants often feel like plastic. And they're like a little bit more hard, like thick plastic. Whereas perennial plants are more flimsy. Do you have any hanging moss? Like the stuff people call Spanish moss? Yeah, grandfather moss, we do. And it's actually a lichen. So when I find them, they're usually three things. We used to think there were just two. We used to think that lichen were a combination of, let me find a lichen before I get into this too deeply. But yes, we do have mosses here. We have lots of mosses here. And the hanging stuff that we have on the maple trees around here is usually a lichen, which is a algae and a fungus, and usually a cyanobacteria combined, or a fungus, an algae, and another type of fungus, a yeast, combined. So lichens are super interesting. I don't know a whole lot about them. I'm still learning about them. So, got any other questions? I know about trillium, but what other flowers are there to see? Oh, you must be coming on right now, Tiffany. There are a bunch of flowers here. We'll do a quick review. There's violets, and there's redwood sorrel. That one's about to open. And there are a bunch of others in the sunnier parts. Oops, sunnier parts over there. Anyways, I will take a few more questions, and then we'll start to wrap it up. Let's go here. But I want to just hit on some points that we already talked about. Plants, native plants, plants that are from a region that have evolved there, have very, very close relationships with insects, animals, and funguses. 95% of our plants have a symbiotic relationship with some type of fungus, helping it get nutrients out of the soil. There's so much to learn about plants, and it's very, very interesting. And if you want to recreate a park in your yard, you can do it, because I think the parks are plants to me, because I'm a plant nerd. But you could find out by going to National Wildlife Federation's Native Plant Finder. You can put in your zip code, and you can find out the plants that are native to your area. Then you could call your state's Native Plant Society, ask them where you could get those plants. They probably know of a nursery near you. And then you could plant those, and maybe the wildlife, the insects, and some of the other wildlife that depends on those plants will come into your yard. Maybe when birds are migrating down south and they can't find, undeveloped land because we've developed so much with agriculture and stuff, maybe they'll see the native plants in your yard, and that's where they all go to eat berries during migration. So you could really help wildlife by planting native plants. And I just hope that all of you do that, even if it's just on your porch. So I see some questions here. Parks are open, just campgrounds are closed. So some parks are closed, some parks are open. The parks up here are open, our campgrounds are closed, our visitor centers are closed. And we want everybody to make sure they do their 6 feet social distancing when they're here. So this is about 5 feet right here, or 4 feet. How are non-native plants impacting redwood forest? Great question, Tiffany. English ivy is doing terrible things, and one of the reasons why non-native plants and invasive plants are so bad is because that relationship we talked about, where there's host plants that the insects here have evolved with so they can lay their eggs in those host plants. Invasive plants they haven't evolved with, so those plants, they're not food to them. They're only like 5% of our insects are generalist eaters. Most of our insects specialize in eating just a certain type of plant. So when you replace the native plants with non-native plants, there's no food for them to eat. And if there's no food for caterpillars and insects to eat, then there's no food for birds to feed their babies. Most birds, most songbirds, and most birds overall feed their babies insects, unless they're a raptor or a seabird. So the more native plants, the more insects, the more birds are fed. So we've completely disrupted our natural ecosystems by planting non-native plants. I know they're beautiful. Non-native plants are beautiful, but there should be gardens for them, not native plant gardens. There should be non-native plant gardens, and everything else should be native plants, so we can support our native insects like butterflies, which no one's mad at butterflies, remember that, and birds. So that's how they disrupt the redwood ecosystem, is they're displacing the food plants the animals depend on. Trails are open, but select parks are closing parking lots. Most facilities are closed. See the latest press release here. So you guys should check out Redwoods post right there and follow that link so you can find out exactly what's happening, because there's things going on differently in different parks, depends on the district. And you want to make sure that you're on the right page. All right, any last questions? So I'm going to do this again on Sunday at 3 o'clock. I'm going to talk a little bit more about animals. That will be more of an animal-focused time. And then we're going to talk about plants again next Friday at 3. I am going to repeat a lot of these conservation concepts like planting native plants because it's so important, okay? So important. What makes this place a biosphere reserve globally, what makes this place a heritage site, what makes this place like super fascinating ecologically isn't just the redwoods, it's the whole community of native plants and animals. Okay, that's what makes this place a park, and we should have more of these places, and these places could even be in our own spaces in the middle of the city if we plant native plants. You could have a park right in your backyard. So if there's no more questions, wait, Jermaine asked about salmonberry flowers above. Oh, you know what? I haven't seen any salmon berries growing right here, but we do have them in the park, and they are blooming right now, and they're beautiful. They're like super red and awesome. Salmon berries don't really have like a flavor, but they're pretty berries too. They're salmon colored, hence the name, salmon berries. All right. Hey, cousin. Awesome. Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for caring enough about plants and parks to listen to these things, and I hope that you guys share the information that I'm sharing with you, because I learned from someone else. I learned from Doug Ptolemy's book, Bringing Nature Home, from my grandmother who got me interested in plants back in the early 70s. We can have a culture of conservation and the outdoors if we pass it down. Please bring your kids to park when it's safe to do so, okay, when it's safe to travel and come here. Please bring your kids. Let them get to know and play in these parks. One of the best way to make a conservationist is to let kids play outside. Just like unstructured, just go exploring, get poison oak once or twice. Maybe not that part. But let them explore the park and become conservationists. Because that's how we're going to save the world, is by playing, having a good time, and learning. So I'm going to go wash off all this equipment, sterilize it, because it's shared equipment. I'm going to wash my hands, and I'm going to go... what am I going to go do? I'm probably going to go put this stuff away and come back out here to tell you the truth, because I got to prepare for another live stream, and lucky me, my job is to talk about this place. Thanks for joining me. Please share our live streams. We have them coming out almost every single day. Go to North Coast Redwood District's Facebook page, and you can see all my awesome coworkers talking about history of Humboldt, talking about the MPA's marine protected areas, talking about Yurok culture. Fascinating stuff. I watch them and I love them, and you should too. I'll see you guys Sunday at 3 o'clock, California time, PST.